I thought I was planning the happiest day of my life. But the woman I loved disappeared overnight, along with our entire wedding fund. Now I'm drowning in debt for a wedding that never happened, and the account was in my name. My name is Eli Granger, and I work as a freelance web developer based in Portland. My days were simple: lines of code, coffee refills, and the quiet joy of building things from scratch. But all of that took a backseat the moment I met Lena. I met her at a mutual friend's birthday party. She was the kind of woman who walked into a room and made it brighter, not loud or flashy, just magnetic. We got to talking over cupcakes and red wine, and it felt like I'd known her forever. She laughed at my dry jokes, asked about my projects, and even said she admired my discipline for freelancing full-time. For a guy who spent most nights debugging websites, I suddenly felt seen. In the months that followed, we were inseparable. Lena moved in after 6 months, and everything felt easy. She cooked, I cleaned. She was spontaneous, I was stable. We balanced each other out. My parents loved her. My friends thought I was the luckiest guy alive, and honestly, I believed it too. One night while we were watching an old movie on the couch, Lena looked over and whispered, "I want to marry you someday." My heart felt like it grew 3 sizes. I didn't have a ring yet, but I held her hand and said, "Then let's start planning." We weren't rich by any means, so we decided to create a separate wedding fund. I opened a new account under my name. Lena said it was easier that way since I had the better credit score and consistent invoices from clients. I didn't think twice. We made little contributions every week. She'd cheer every time we hit a new milestone: $5,000, $8,000, $12,000. She'd say things like, "This is going to be the wedding of our dreams." Looking back, maybe I should have noticed how she never actually deposited money herself, or how she was oddly excited about every bank update. But love makes you blind, and I was head over heels. At the time, I truly believed we were building forever together. I had no idea that forever for her had a much shorter timeline. After we decided to get married, everything felt more real. There was something electric in the air every time we talked about venues or wedding playlists. I'd never been someone who cared much about floral arrangements or color palettes, but when Lena got excited, I got excited too. We agreed to be practical: no over-the-top spending, no debt we couldn't pay off, so I opened a separate savings account dedicated entirely to the wedding. It was under my name, but we both had the login details. Lena said it made more sense that way. "Your income is more stable," she told me, "and I don't want to mess up anything with my credit. You're already so organized, this'll be easy for you." It sounded logical. I'd never managed money for 2 before, but I was proud to do it for her. I set up automated deposits from my client payouts, small at first, then more as my projects picked up. I built a tracker spreadsheet and color-coded every expense we anticipated. Dress, suit, food, venue, DJ. Lena would light up when she saw the numbers growing. "You're amazing, Eli," she'd say, hugging me from behind while I worked. "I can't believe how lucky I am." But as time passed, I started noticing a pattern. She didn't really talk about her own savings anymore. Early on, she'd mentioned setting some cash aside from her bartending job, but that faded. If I brought it up gently, she'd smile and say, "It's not much. Better we use your account. We're going to share everything soon anyway, right?" She was right. We were getting married. What was mine would be hers, and vice versa. Still, a small part of me felt like something was off. But every time I saw her face light up while scrolling through wedding inspo or showing me Pinterest boards full of rustic outdoor receptions, my doubt dissolved. I told myself not to overthink. I was building a life with someone I loved. Isn't that what marriage is about? Trust. Back then, I didn't realize I was the only one actually building it. The morning Lena disappeared started like any other. I made coffee while she got ready for work. She kissed me on the cheek, smiled, and said, "Don't forget to check out that barn venue I sent you. It's perfect." Then she was gone. I never saw her again. At first, I didn't panic. She worked late sometimes, especially on weekends. I figured maybe her phone died. Maybe she stayed with a friend. It wasn't like her to vanish, but I tried not to assume the worst. By midnight, I was pacing the apartment. I texted, I called, I messaged her on every app we used. Nothing. I even called her coworkers, but they hadn't seen her since her last shift a few days ago. That was the first red flag. I thought she went to work that morning. I barely slept. I kept staring at the door, expecting it to swing open and for her to laugh and say it was all a misunderstanding. But the door never opened. The silence was deafening. The next day, I filed a missing person report. I called her family. Her mom was confused but calm. "She's always been a little impulsive," she said, which didn't make me feel better. "She probably just needed space." Space? We were supposed to get married in 2 months. Friends reached out, offering help, some even searching local shelters or hospitals in case something had happened. I didn't want to consider that. I kept thinking about the night before. She was smiling, happy. There were no signs of distress, no tearful goodbyes, just a kiss and a wedding venue suggestion. 3 days passed, then 5. The police said there was no sign of foul play, no suspicious activity on her phone records. Her phone was off, her social media silent. I checked our apartment. No suitcase missing, no empty drawers, just a few personal items gone that I hadn't noticed before. That's when the weight started to settle in my chest, heavy, slow, and sharp all at once. Something was deeply wrong, and I didn't know if I should be scared for her or hurt by her. What I didn't know was that the worst hadn't even started. A week passed. 7 days without a word from Lena. Her things were still gone, the account still sat there untouched, or so I thought. I was still holding on to hope, as stupid as that sounds. I kept checking my phone like maybe she'd text me. "Sorry, I just needed to breathe." Something, anything. Instead, I got a call from her best friend, Maya, who had been avoiding me since Lena vanished. When I picked up, her voice was tight, like she'd been holding in a secret too big to carry. "Eli," she said, "I didn't want to be the one to tell you this, but you deserve to know." My heart dropped. "She's not missing," she left. I couldn't speak. "She went to Mexico with some guy. I don't know all the details, but they've been seeing each other for a while." I couldn't breathe. My ears rang as her words hit me like a punch to the chest. She said she couldn't handle settling down, that the wedding, the account, it was just a way to get out. I dropped the phone. I just stood there in the middle of my apartment, the one we had decorated together, with all the quiet reminders of her still around me, her scarf on the hook, her favorite mug in the sink. My knees buckled. I sat on the floor and stared at nothing. The silence was louder than ever. A part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to cry. But mostly I felt empty, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left behind a shell. I had been planning a future with someone who never meant to stay. Every promise she made, every kiss, every time she held my hand and said, "Forever," all of it was fake. But I wasn't even close to rock bottom yet. Because the next day, I checked the wedding fund. And it was gone. I stared at the online banking screen, refreshing it like maybe it was just a glitch. Balance $3.14. The last time I had checked, we had just over $19,000 in the wedding fund. I had been so proud of that number. It was the product of 2 years of saving, project after project, weekend freelance gigs, and skipped vacations. Now it was gone. I clicked through the transaction history. My heart thudded with every withdrawal. A few hundred here, a few thousand there. The last transaction was a wire transfer to an international account. From me. Or at least that's how the bank saw it. The money had all been pulled under my name, from my account and with my login. I remembered Lena watching me type in the password a dozen times. She'd smile and joke, "You need a more complicated one, anyone could guess this." I never changed it. I called the bank in a panic, hoping to freeze the account, reverse the transfers, anything. But the woman on the phone was calm, almost rehearsed. "Since the account is solely in your name and the access was not unauthorized, I'm afraid we can't classify this as fraud, Mr. Granger." "But I didn't make the transfer," I said, my voice shaking. "Did anyone else have access to your credentials?" I hesitated, then said the truth. "Yes." And just like that, it became a personal matter, not a legal one. I wasn't a victim in the system's eyes. I was just careless. I had trusted someone. Now I was liable. I hung up, my hands numb, my breath shallow. The money wasn't just gone, it was traced back to me. And if that weren't bad enough, some of the deposits had been made using my credit card, which I had linked to keep it growing. Meaning I didn't just lose my savings. I was now in debt over a wedding that would never happen. I felt sick. The betrayal was no longer emotional. It was financial, legal, real in every terrifying way. And I knew, somehow, this was just the beginning of a much deeper mess. I stopped answering texts. I ignored calls. I didn't even tell my parents what happened. I couldn't bear the shame. How do you explain that the woman you were going to marry emptied your savings and ran off with someone else and left the debt in your name? I couldn't even say it out loud without choking on the words. The next few weeks were a blur of anxiety and avoidance. My sleep disappeared. My appetite vanished. I stopped taking new clients. The only thing I did regularly was stare at the bank statements, hoping the numbers would somehow change. They never did. I started getting calls from the credit card companies, polite at first, then more aggressive. Minimum payment due, outstanding balance. One even threatened legal action. I tried explaining what had happened, but it didn't matter. The accounts were in my name. The debt was mine. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw someone pathetic, someone stupid enough to believe in forever with a woman who saw me as nothing more than an ATM. I blamed myself more than I blamed her. How could I not have seen it? The little signs, the lies dressed as logic, the account in my name, the missing receipts, the way she dodged questions about money. It all came rushing back like a cruel montage. The worst part wasn't the money, or the betrayal, or even the debt. It was the silence. Everyone moved on like it was just another failed relationship. But I was stuck, trapped in an apartment full of memories, drowning in bills and emotionally shattered. I didn't just lose Lena, I lost myself. One night, I sat on the couch with my unopened laptop beside me and an unpaid electricity bill in my hand. I thought about disappearing too, packing a bag, changing my number, leaving it all behind. But as I sat in the dark, one bitter thought started to burn hotter than all the others. She ruined my life, and I was the one paying for it. And suddenly, for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel numb. I felt angry. Anger did what grief couldn't, it woke me up. I started eating again, even if it was just cereal and toast. I reopened my laptop not to work, but to dig. I wasn't sure what I was looking for at first. Maybe proof that Lena had planned this from the beginning. Maybe a paper trail I could use to build a case, or maybe I just wanted to understand why. But deep down, I think I wanted one thing more than anything: accountability. I began with our shared messages, old texts, voice notes, emails. At first, it just hurt. Her words felt so real back then. Things like, "I love the life we're building," or "You make me feel safe." But the further back I went, the more I started to notice a pattern. Lena had always been vague about her past. No photos of her family, no friends from before Portland. She had a habit of changing jobs every few months and rarely mentioned coworkers by name. At the time, I thought she was just private. But now I wondered, was she hiding something? I dug deeper. I searched her name online, nothing much came up. Her Instagram was still deactivated. But then I remembered something small, a mail package from months ago that had arrived in someone else's name. She brushed it off, said it was for an old roommate who forgot to update her address. I hadn't thought much of it then. Now I did. I looked up that name, Carla Duvall, and that's when things cracked open. Turns out there were reports in forums about a woman by that name who had scammed an ex-boyfriend in Arizona. Same pattern: quick romance, wedding talk, shared savings account, sudden disappearance. My stomach turned. The more I read, the more I was sure Lena and Carla were the same person. Different states, same script. She had done this before. I wasn't her first mark. I wasn't special. I was a target. The realization didn't bring peace. It brought rage. Because if she had done it before, chances were she'd do it again. And maybe, just maybe, I could stop her this time. Once I knew her other name, Carla Duvall, I couldn't stop digging. It was like someone had flipped a switch in my brain. I stopped thinking like a broken fiancé and started thinking like someone who needed answers and justice. I stayed up for hours every night scrolling through old blogs, forum posts, and small-town news articles. Carla had used different last names in different states, Duvall, Monroe, Kellys, but the pattern was always the same. Young guy, quick engagement, a shared account. Then she disappeared, usually with a large sum of money. Sometimes it took months, sometimes only weeks. And none of the victims ever got their money back. They had tried, but law enforcement called it a domestic matter. She left no legal fingerprints behind, no shared accounts, no written contracts, no signed loans. She didn't even use her real name, just the guy's trust. Same as me. I reached out to two of the men I found online who had posted about her. One responded, his name was Daniel. We talked over Zoom. He looked tired but kind. When I mentioned Lena, his expression changed immediately. She got you too, he said quietly. Daniel told me his story. It was almost identical, same charm, same whirlwind romance, same lie. She had promised him forever, too, then took everything and left without a trace. She's good at vanishing, he said, but she always reappears eventually. New name, new story. Then he said something that stuck with me. She's smart, but she gets cocky. Last time I tracked her, she used the same burner email to book flights. Sloppy. That was all I needed to hear. I went back through Lena's old devices. She had left her old tablet in the closet, buried under scarves. I cracked it open and managed to guess the password. Inside, I found cached logins. One was to a travel app under the name Tessa Monroe. I froze. There it was, a one-way ticket to Cancun, booked a day before she disappeared. I had her location. I had her alias. And for the first time since she walked out of my life, I had power. She thought she was done with me. But I wasn't done with her. I landed in Cancun with nothing but a backpack, printouts of her fake profiles, and the kind of exhaustion that lives in your bones. I didn't even know what I expected. Closure. A confession. Maybe just the chance to say everything I'd rehearsed 100 times alone in my apartment. I had one lead, a cheap beachfront hostel under the name Tessa Monroe. According to the booking site, she'd checked in 2 weeks ago. I stood outside the place for nearly an hour trying to calm the storm in my chest. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but fury. She had ruined my life. She had taken my future, drained my money, and vanished without consequence. And now, she was sipping margaritas under the sun like it was nothing. I walked in. At the front desk, I asked for Tessa. The guy barely looked up. Outback green hammock. I stepped through the courtyard. And there she was. Laughing, hair braided, skin sun-kissed, she looked happy, like nothing had happened, like I hadn't lost sleep, hope, or myself over her. She turned and froze. Eli. Her voice cracked. For the first time, I saw something real in her eyes, fear. I didn't yell, I didn't cause a scene. I just looked at her and said, "You thought I wouldn't find you." She stood slowly, hands up like I might explode. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered. I laughed, bitter and low. "You never meant any of it. Did you even love me?" She didn't answer. That said more than words ever could. She tried to talk, but I stopped her. I showed her the files, the screenshots, the proof of her other lives. I told her about Daniel, about the others. I told her I wasn't walking away empty this time. "I'm pressing charges," I said, "and I'm not alone." Her face changed then. The calm cracked. Maybe for the first time she realized she wasn't as invisible as she thought. I walked away before she could speak again. My hands were still trembling, but I didn't feel powerless anymore. I felt free. The sun was setting as I boarded the flight home. No dramatic last words, no apology from Lena, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing the mask had finally slipped. I had given her name to the authorities, both of them actually. With Daniel's help and the others we'd found online, we'd begun the long process of building a formal case. It would take time. Maybe she'd slip through the cracks again, maybe not. But that wasn't mine to carry anymore. Back home, things weren't suddenly easy. The debt was still there. The loneliness lingered. My apartment still echoed with memories, but something had shifted. I wasn't drowning anymore. I started working again, just a few small design clients at first. I sold the ring and used the money to pay down part of the credit cards. I deleted the wedding Pinterest board, boxed up the photos, took her mug out of the cabinet and threw it in the trash. I thought I'd feel broken forever, but slowly I began to feel something else. Pride. I didn't fall apart. I didn't let her destroy me. I had been scammed, betrayed, humiliated, but I faced it. I faced her, and I walked away with my head high. One afternoon, I met up with Daniel for coffee. We talked about life, work, and how both of us were finally sleeping through the night. Before we left, he said something that stuck with me. "She may have taken your money, Eli, but you took her power." That night, I wrote something in my journal I hadn't dared to believe in months. I survived, and now I get to begin again. I'm not in a rush to fall in love. I'm not even sure what trust looks like anymore. But I know who I am now, and that's something no one can ever steal. Lena or Carla or Tessa, or whatever name she uses next, will always be running. But me. I'm finally standing still, on solid ground, looking forward. And that feels like more than enough.